The South Dakota Stories, Volume 4. I remember wondering why I'd ever visit South Dakota in the winter. But then again, why hadn't I? There was so much wilderness to explore, so many ways to restore my soul, and so many landscapes that put a smile on my chilly face. So why would I visit South Dakota in the winter? 'Cause this is where winter was meant to be. There's so much South Dakota, so little time.
So welcome to another great evening here. We're in the ATL. Are you also in Atlanta?
I am, yeah. I'm located right in between Little Five Points and Campbell Park.
Okay, so, yeah, the cool area.
Right off the Freedom Trail, yeah.
Nice and eclectic over there. For those outside of Atlanta, Little Five Points is this really eclectic area. You got a theater over there, a lot of different types of restaurants, and very neat shops. The record store is still there. Is it still going in the age of time?
There's actually 2 record stores now, and plenty of folks that come out to do their busking. You know, they'll just pull their whatever it is, guitar, bongo, djembe, and just work the streets to try to get people pay attention. It's a hard thing though during the pandemic, for sure, for the buskers. It's hard to sing on the street with a mask on. And really project yourself to the point where you're singing to people on the street. And so there's occasionally I still like to go out and find a nice corner to stand in, not to sound creepy, but to play some music in a good part of town and have fun with it. But it's definitely the pandemic has sort of hurt all businesses, and sort of the arts especially. And I know that a lot of people, well, it's not necessary. You're not going in and saving lives and all the rest. But I do think that there's a certain amount of like mental health that goes into the music, the playing of it, the listening to it, the being in an audience. The excitement you get when you have a concert to get ready for or to go to, and with the lot of the venues shut down or temporarily shuttered, it's definitely a struggle, but it's something that as a musician we're sort of coming tighter together as a community of musicians to lift each other up.
It's really important because it's just like, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. It's really to lift people up, get it out there, and aside from finding out about the artist and really going into their past, it's really about promoting them and saying they're working really hard and they're trying to make a living. And unfortunately, something so much bigger than all of us has come in here.
Nobody
could have control over it.
Nobody could have seen this coming.
No, I mean, how could you prepare for that? We could all save money and do all that, but it's impossible to prepare for something so large. Like we didn't see it at all.
Yeah, and it really makes this entire generation think there's got to be something for a rainy day, right. And there wasn't for a lot, and all of a sudden on top of everything else, now there's these health concerns and respect concerns and people who can't quite wrap their head around empathy to the point where it's, I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to protect myself. If you don't want to, that's your thing, but don't come after me because this is something that I want to do. I've got an 8-year-old daughter. I want to make sure we're all, safe and sound every step of the way.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so is this music, is it your day job? Is this a full-time thing you're going after?
It is. It was, prior to this craziness, my brother-in-law, who is the other half of the group that I'm in called the Foothill Brothers, he and I were playing upwards of 150 or so shows a year. And so we were able to, between that and booking, time in studios with musicians and folks that sort of wanted to, get us on the hire, or even the private weddings and, the parties and stuff like that, to go down from that to say a dozen shows is a huge difference. And so, for me, it was a lifestyle choice. I had always been a musician. But I had been a musician and also a social studies teacher. And a couple of years ago, I left the classroom after it became more and more aware that I was kind of a disruptor. I feel like there's so much to gain out of actual truth and, authenticity. And there were so many standards in this great state of Georgia that we're in that just kind of missed the mark. And it made it more and more difficult to teach the important things to the kids. So there was a gap that was created. But I took my music and I took my sort of passion for history and truth and authenticity. I put it in the direction of writing songs and being surrounded by musicians that were really, really getting into their own souls. That was a good way of helping me see how music could get to that soul. I study under a guy named Mudcat, the blues player in Atlanta. And we haven't seen each other in a minute because of the pandemic. But, prior to all of this, he was just sort of explaining the different variations of the song, and whatever song it might be, right? Like today, we might think of it as, for instance, a Grateful Dead song, right? We might think of it as like something that Fish plays once in a while, whoever it might be. But really, it's not. And really, you go back in time, you look at where it comes from, and you look at the people that play that music and the type of music that it is. And then at the end of the day, you understand that there's either joy or sadness behind those fun little songs. We think about like a song like Going Down the Road Feeling Bad. That was written in a time that was, in the Jim Crow South, where there was really a need to get away. But this idea of going down the road feeling bad was the whole idea of the African American experience of not actually being able to go down the road and have happiness and joy meet you, but to have all the hurdles up.
It's interesting. That really is.
So I took it and I worked for a while with a group with the Alliance Theater to try to help steer some of the music authenticity. And now I'm doing a lot of writing. Prior to all of this, I was also running a couple venues in town and helping the sound folks, and also working as a studio musician for those in need. But when this pandemic hit, it all shuttered, and so everything all of a sudden was just gone with the wind.
How depressing that is.
It is, but so out of that you can, and a couple of tunes that I've written through this pandemic have sort of highlighted my ups and downs with that. And I'm no perfect individual whatsoever. I've got all the mental anguish that anybody else might have, but in my own way. And I think that's a big part of the experience, is to understand that we all suffer differently. And so the idea is, can we suffer in a way that is, well to us? Can we find healing through it? And so that becomes a lot of the times where I turn to the music, and I think about the process. I get out of my head. I turn the news off. I turn social media off. I don't want to look at any of that because it's a toxic environment that breeds more toxicity. And we are already growing up in a toxic environment enough. So why continue to manifest it?
Yeah, it's like you're volunteering, you're signing yourself up for that when you're on social media, and it's so hard to avoid. It's a total train wreck. Going
It,
back to being a social studies teacher,
yeah.
did you have to deal with No Child Left Behind and all these? You were mentioning standards.
So
Was it?
there was there've been a lot of different versions of that No Child Left Behind. I started teaching in the public schools up in Chicago, and then came to Atlanta and was teaching here. All the while, kind of playing in string bands at nighttime, and trying to make it, one eyed open the next morning. Oh, I'm fine. I can make it through this. I didn't mean to play till 2 o'clock in the morning. Um, but no, the idea of this No Child Left Behind, the idea that everybody's going to catch up, and I think that this actually gives us a minute to think about historical perspective on pandemics. And a lot of you out there listening might have a kid at home that's going through school, that's doing the virtual schooling right now, and trying to navigate all of those social graces that they're missing. But the reality is when the last global pandemic hit, what was that, 1917, 1918, they school systems ended up holding back several years of kids in different ways. And not everybody was held back, but in order to allow for a bunch of kids to catch up. Now, this idea of No Child Left Behind, unfortunately, doesn't take into consideration communities that are at risk, right, or that are impoverished, or that are sort of unspoken for. There is a big difference between a house that has internet and a house that doesn't. Especially with the virtual learning, there's a big difference between a house that has a bookshelf full of books and a house that doesn't have books. So, and are people still reading to their kids, or are we getting frustrated because we've all been at home around each other too much? And so I think that's when we put ourselves to the side in that respect, right? But no, the idea of No Child Left Behind doesn't account for all the children that were already behind before somebody said, we're not going to have any children left behind.
Yeah, it's just you can't paint everybody with the same wide brush and all the standardized stuff. And I'm sure you're finding yourself teaching the tests, and it's just this whole rote memorization and not really absorbing or really gaining perspective. So I'm sure probably the music was a great outlet for you during all this, I would imagine.
And I was in the classroom for about 15 years. And really what got to me was I was teaching about disenfranchised communities, and as part of a larger unit. But I had several parents say that was too racially one-sided. I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, my kid doesn't experience those things. And I said, well, then your kid won't ever be able to experience that other person until they can experience those things, or until they can understand that experience. It's a sort of a cyclone of nimbuses.
Well, so starting out, when did you learn how to play guitar and get into music? Was this long before teaching, when you were very young, and where did you grow up?
So I'm one of the few people in Atlanta that can say that I grew up in Atlanta.
Oh, you're the one. Okay.
I'm the one. Yeah, I'm that guy. And so my grandmother had this beautiful piano, and when I was about 5, 6 years old, she started me with lessons, and then I got to a point where I kind of got sick of piano, because you turn into a teenager and you're like, oh, I don't want to play piano. I'd rather play electric guitar. But instead, I chose bass, and so I played bass for many years. Those first few years as a musician, you play with a lot of people, for better or worse. A lot of people that maybe put you in a punk band or a rock band, or all these different things. When I was about 14, I think it was my 14th. It was the Hanukkah of my 14th year. My mother gave me my first mandolin.
Ah.
Because my mother was an old sort of, not old, sorry, Mom. She's sort of, like a very folksy individual. She likes the oldies, but every summer we also used to go up to Helen and to the bluegrass festivals up near Blue Ridge or whatever else it might be. And that really...
It's time to center mental health in Omaha. At Community Alliance, we're building a new center at 72nd and Mercy Road so that anyone seeking help for their mental health can access the personalized care they need to flourish. Support our campaign at mentalhealthomaha.org.
That got my sort of, myself going with what I wanted to do. And then when I was about 12 years old, my older sister and my now brother-in-law introduced me to the Grateful Dead. And so I got to see them several times live, which was a pretty unique thing. Like the actual, Jerry was there. He wasn't doing great, but he was still on stage. And through college, I played in bands. And then after college, I had different groups. And when I moved up to Chicago from Atlanta, I had a solo act for a while, then joined up with a string band, came back to Atlanta, and my brother-in-law and I decided to put this group together, the Foothill Brothers, that was really guitar and mandolin, and it was just two instruments and two voices, sort of in the style of like a David Grisman, Jerry Garcia kind of feel. We're playing a lot of those old-timey Americana folk roots, classic music, that a lot of people don't realize a lot of other stuff was born out of. And now with the pandemic, unfortunately my brother-in-law does have some pre-existing lung conditions, so he's not able to play out any longer. So how do you turn that around? And everybody's talking about this idea of pivoting. So how do you pivot in this moment? I'm still a musician. I'm still going to do everything I can to be a musician. So I said, this is a great opportunity to write a whole bunch of songs and to put it all down. And you know what? I'm going to let things out. Whereas before, it's kind of weird. Prior to the pandemic, I would write a song. It would always resolve into a beautiful situation. But that's not truth. Right. So then I got into it more with just sitting with this time on my hands. And I started realizing I need to speak my truth, and I need it to be loud and clear. And so, I wanted to make sure, after the insurrection on the Capitol, that evening I sat down and I wrote this tune called Falling Leaves. And I'll play it for you in a moment. But it's, the idea here is basically that, those same leaves that are going to clean the air and everything for you are doing the same thing for me. We all need the same stuff here, so let's put all of that aside, and let's just, as I say, let's just fix the divide and be at peace.
Nice. Yeah. It's so you react pretty quickly to social events and can pretty much craft a song out of that. Is that a long process for you?
Songwriting is a very interesting process. There's times that I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll just have this, this sort of tune going through my head, and I'll sit down and I'll try to work it out. There's times that I can write the guitar part or the mandolin part or whatever it might be, and can't think of a word to save my life. And there's other times that the whole song comes all at once. And sometimes those are really amazing, great days when you can do that. It's very frustrating, of course, when you're sitting there trying to, it doesn't rhyme, it doesn't need to rhyme. Bob Dylan never rhymed. It's fine.
Oh, the worst thing is placing rules on yourself. It's like, no, stop making these boundaries, because then that's going to cause your writer's block. And it's like, no, I'm really stuck.
As a songwriter, that's something that we go through is that, there's a formula in place. There's an intro, there's a building up, there's a chorus. There have to be so many stanzas between things. So I did my best to start breaking away at that. And again, just giving what I need to give.
Nice. So, you could do a snippet the whole thing. The song that has been inspired by the insurrection.
Sure, and I just want to preface that by also saying that I understand that people on both sides feel different ways, and
Sure.
I'm not. This is not my sort of revolution. We need to go attack each other in the streets. This is really a song about empathy. This is really a song about what happens when people do become too selfish, and how that affects other people. At the beginning, well, middle of this pandemic, I guess I don't even know where we are anymore with all of it. But one of my great aunts passed away. She was in a nursing home here in Atlanta, and one of her caregivers went away for the 4th of July, and unfortunately came back and was positive for COVID, and ended up getting a lot of people in that home ill, and as a result, several of them passed away. And it's not, it's what I'm talking. It's not about taking care of your emotion in terms of your larger than lifeness. It's about understanding that there's other people in the world. Those other people have different boundaries than you do, and so it's okay to respect those boundaries and to stop screaming at each other. If you don't want to listen, that's fine, but maybe leave the room.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So this is a song called "Falling Leaves," and again, I wrote this kind of as a response to that whole debacle.
Okay.
What makes you so selfish that we can't get along? Your pride robs my health. Your greed is too strong. Babies are hungry. You blame all but your cause. While people are dying, you say it's not my fault. Well, the leaves that clean the air for you will fall to the ground, whatever you do. And those same leaves clean the air for me. So let's fix our divide and be at peace. What you call your heritage, most call a sin. That may we never, ever, ever see those days again. You wear it so proudly, I can't understand. While good folks all over get crushed from your hand. Oh, those leaves that clean the air for you will fall to the ground, whatever you do. And those same leaves clean the air for me. So let's fix our divide and be at peace. Maybe you could just listen and don't raise your voice. Stop telling me that I'm wrong. Show respect for my choice. Show love some mercy. There's nothing to lose. We can count on each other, sisters and brothers, forever and ever. Well, those leaves that clean the air for you will fall to the ground, whatever you do. And those same leaves clean care for me. So let's fix on divine and be at peace. Let's fix on divine and be at peace.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Fantastic to be able to come up with that quite fast. That's really very incredible, actually.
I appreciate that. Like I said, sometimes it just, you have a lot to say all at one time.
Yeah. Oh, and seeing that day, I'm like, it's not that somebody's going to get hurt. I'm saying somebody's going to get killed. I mean, I was like, this is just like, and seeing this in real time, it's like, what a profound experience that was.
And how it bolsters the community of hate in such a way. How it makes them feel now emboldened to continue to do what they've walked through the Capitol.
Yeah.
But honestly, as someone who's taught American history, shame on them.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have an opportunity where you can, deface and defile an institution with such value.
I always thought it was so many years in the making, and it was just tapping into this populist anger. And yeah, we've seen that in our history before, but to see it in modern times, you thought, oh yeah, we really advanced beyond this. This couldn't be possibly happening again. And sure enough, it had.
I was so shocked, when I turned on the news when it all hit, and that was one of those days where I couldn't watch all day long because I knew what that was going to do to my emotional well-being. So, snippets here and there, but then towards the end of it, you couldn't look away. You're looking at a car wreck at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's about tapping into, this anger that people have had for many, many years. And I could see the empathy with that and seeing how somebody's just getting in this mob and catching onto that mentality. And really then they're just thinking in the moment. They're not thinking about the consequences.
The mob mentality. And, it's the idea that there is no truth. And when you think about that, when you saw people at the Capitol of the United States of America holding the flags of the Confederate States of America, there's a big problem there that there's a whole group of people that feel like they maybe didn't lose the Civil War, or that it's still going on. And, we're so many years, so many generations later, but it shows how many we're not, how much we're not that far out from it all, and so we've got to find this unity, this moment to build, because if we don't, then the next generation continues to think that same crap.
Yeah, it just gets passed along and the cycle keeps going and going. And it's
right.
Hard to totally eradicate that. As I was sure growing up in the South,
it's an impossible thing. But if you're not fighting for the eradication, then you're not doing your own work. So it's something where it is our responsibility to help other people understand those experiences.
Yeah. It really doesn't matter how far north or south you are. So I've been down here over 3 decades, and leading 2 decades, I was up in Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, and it had its own set of issues. So it doesn't matter where you come from. I mean, this kind of, and people who descended on the Capitol came from everywhere. It wasn't
from everywhere, and it comes from communities that are, also impoverished, that also deal with their own social issues and class wars and whatnot. And, they feel like this is maybe a moment where they can take control and have control. But that's not how you get control.
Absolutely. So going back to your music, what was your first guitar? How was that? What was that like? And the type of guitars that you've been playing on all these years?
Yeah, that's a wonderful roadmap. My first guitar was my father's Yamaha classical folk music guitar that he had from when he was in college, like back in the early 60s. And I got a hold of it somehow. And I think my dad knew one song, "Hang On, Sloopy." And so that was the song that would, hang on, Sloopy, Sloopy. I'm like, all right, cool. No. And, but I love playing that guitar. And then, like I said, my mother got me my first mandolin. And, my parents got me an old Squire bass as my first bass. But then I sort of, there's value in having the right kind of instrument. And so there's a lot of people who could take.
Come unwrap some holiday magic this season in Denver, where the lights are brighter and the shopping is grander, where the season feels a whole lot more wonderful. Discover great hotels and more things to do at milehighholidays.com.
Go Ford for your next truck or SUV and find an easier way to buy with Woodhouse Ford today. And experience the convenience of buying with Woodhouse Ford. Lease a 2023 Ford Escape Active for $397 per month for 48 months and 7,500 miles per year. First payment and $299 doc fee due at signing. Security deposit waived. Tax, title, license extra with approved credit. Expires 12/04/2023.
A clunker off the shelf and fix it up and make it beautiful. But then there's also some brands that I typically think are, sort of in that sort of upper echelon, so to speak. So, I've had this Martin, for instance, for about 2.5 decades. And I've been playing on it. This is one of my workhorses. Over the years, I've had work done to it, right? It's not the same that I pulled off the shelves. I had these, I don't know if you can see these tuners put on, and these actually date back to the turn of the century. And I had a few other little random things done on the inside to make it have a different tone. And then my real workhorse when I'm playing with other folks is my Eastman mandolin. And Eastman is a fantastic company. They got their start making violins and cellos and sort of classical instruments, and then realized they could just as easily put one of these together. So this guy I've been playing. It's in here. It's since 2004, and so it was one of the first mandolins that they made. And again, I've had this worked on a time or two. I've also got lots of, scratch marks from over the years, but I've yet to find something that feels more comfortable, after so long. And so when I'm sitting around and I'm just sort of, it's got a great warm feel to it. Actually, I got a little jazz tune that I wrote. I could play a snippet for you right now. It's a tune called Sugar Beans. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this little guy has taken me all over. And, I've been lucky enough to play mandolin with a lot of groups and guitar with a lot of groups, and sort of whatever's needed. If I had my ability to get whatever I wanted, I would stand in front of a microphone with one of my acoustic instruments. And I have a fantastic sound engineer that understands acoustics more than most people, and I really let myself sort of go with those microphone experiences. But those are harder to come by nowadays. The crowd seems to get a little louder, so with a loud crowd, you got to plug in.
Turn it up. Put it up on 11.
Right, this one goes to 11.
So that's the ode to David Grisman, Sugar Beans. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. I've been watching him for so many years. I think that he is so revolutionary, And now there's this whole new breed of mandolin players. And I'm not saying that I'm anywhere near that class necessarily, but wow, it's like this sort of new grass door open between him and Sam Bush. And now you got folks like Sierra Hull who just, can tear it apart on that, the Sturgill Simpson album, and just, put everybody to task. And that's such a cool thing. I kind of hope that my daughter one day grows up and wants to continue to play music.
So what is she playing right now? Is she getting into the guitar?
She comes along. Mostly she plays manager. She did tonight before we started. She said, "Well, Dad, do you have your rag? What if you start to sweat?" That's
great.
How is my cut from tonight? And I said, "No, hon, that's not." So she's great. She'll walk my gear in. She'll go up on stage and do all the sound checks. She's a performer in the making.
Wow. Yeah. Start them young. That's great. It's exciting. That really is. That's really, really cool getting into that. So who were your very earliest influences getting into music growing up?
So, early on, before I was given the idea of like good music, I was listening to a lot of, and I should reframe that, not good music, but music that is more to my taste. So there was a lot of punk, a lot of like the bands Rancid or early 311, even early Green Day, like that stuff that was just real loud and distortion. But then, I was introduced to Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, and I never really decided to go back. Nowadays it's, learning about that music helps me learn about different types of music. It takes me back to the oldies, the old timey tunes, the classic Americana tunes, the bluegrass tunes, songs written by Elizabeth Cotton, the blues songs, the jazz tunes. So it really expands to every genre, to say that you're playing. And I love to be an Americana player, an Americana musician. And the reason is every single category of music fits into what could be Americana. Jazz is a very Americana, born in the United States, right? This is as roots as it gets. The blues that was born out of the slave experiences, the Delta blues that was the folks going up and down the Mississippi, all the way to the how it turned into boogie woogie and rock and roll. I mean, all of these things. Eventually, you go back, and you say, that is some truly Americana music. That's the soul of it right there.
Very, very nice. So going on, what have you recorded so far? Do you have full albums out there or just singles?
I've got a solo album from a bunch of years ago, just sort of self-titled, put out. Actually, should probably check to see where it's put out at this point. It was so many years ago. I've recorded with a bunch of projects with some groups from Chicago. Most recently, the group The Foothill Brothers was in a studio and was able to cut our first album. And it's called The Foothill Brothers. You can find that on Spotify and iTunes and all that stuff. And as I'm kind of working on all this writing right now, I'm getting ready to go back into the studio with a group of musicians and put together a lot of these songs that sort of were born out of the pandemic.
Nice. Where do you record when you're in here in town?
There's a couple studios that I really enjoy. The one we used last time was really cool. There's a pub in Little Five Points called Wrecking Bar, and they've got great food as well. And they source their food from their own farm. So the farm is called the Wrecking Farm. The guy and the man and woman who run the place are musicians themselves, and turn part of the farm into a recording studio. So it's out in Loganville, Georgia. And it's a funny story because it's a presidential suite. Jimmy Carter once did a presidential tour of farms. And when he stayed in Loganville, he stayed at this particular farm in the room that was then turned into the recording studio. So where we were playing was like, where Jimmy Carter was like, putting his pajamas on. It's interesting little funny things, but I really like that stripped down feeling of like, somebody putting the recording together in a really fascinating way, as opposed to, all the computers and doohickeys and hitting the buttons and all that. I'm a big fan of like analog. You go back and listen to a bunch of like, for instance, like Pink Floyd stuff from way back when, some David Gilmour riffs from, those just where the analog guy was just like, oh, let me just hit this as high as we can. And it's a different experience, and it's a very cool experience. And I think for this next album, I'm actually going to be tapping my friend Billy Guin, who is a musician in town, but also runs his own studio, to put this next project together. And again, I want it to be as much of a collaboration to help other musicians as it will be for my own soul.
Nice. Well, that's very good. I would look forward to that. Do you have a concept for the album, or it's just gonna come as it comes together? You'll have a title for it.
Yeah, I'm working on a concept, but I'm gonna put a question mark by that and say to be determined later.
Yeah, it always seems to be like
changes.
Yeah. That just as the songs come together, I think it just takes time to say, hey, we got a theme here, and we'll just put it together. As we put it together, we'll get something out there. Right.
And I, at one point, I think I even called the project songs of emotion, and I said no, that's not really. I mean, yeah, it gets the point across, but it's not really cool. Because I'm still a musician. I still want to be cool at the end of the day.
That's what it's all about. That's why you get into it. It's a lot of fun. You've been doing a lot of covers. I've been seeing on Facebook. There's some really nice versions of what you've been done. Paul Simon really comes to mind. And you do a rendition of one of his songs. Does that have any impact on you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Paul Simon is one of these songwriters that you turn to whenever you need anything. I think about let's see, a song like this, right? You just, and all of a sudden you feel better because you're like, hello lamppost, what you knowin'? I've come to watch your flowers growing. Ain't you got no time for me? Do feeling groovy. I mean, and it's so like it changes your mood. You hear that. You hear these, the way that it just sort of implemented the way he writes his songs, and it brightens your day, so to speak. And I actually recorded a song earlier today. All the good times are past and gone, because again, emotion comes from everywhere, and it's an old tune. I can't even remember the original writers of it, but eventually Flatt and Scruggs and Bill Monroe, and recently Dave Rawlings and Gillian Welch put it on an album, and it's the saddest song you'll ever hear, and it makes me smile every time I hear it. I wish to the Lord that I'd never been born or died when I was young. That's the first lines of this song, and all the good times are past and gone. But something about that is like, gosh,
yeah,
they get me.
It really does. It really, really does. Wow. So some of your originals, a song devoted to Annabelle is.
Yeah, I definitely try to write about things that are in my life. So my daughter, I wrote a song for her called "Sweet Annabelle," and she heard it and started crying, and now she loves it. But she'll go through these phases. Sometimes I'm her favorite. Sometimes it's like Taylor Swift, and I'm just like, okay, that's fine. Taylor can have this one. But I've written songs for a lot of folks in my family for their own experiences, and it's one of the ways that I think about being an interpreter of the past. I wrote a song for my grandfather, for instance, and he's no longer around to tell his story. So something has to carry on. Something has to, continue through the ages. And so, I think that's what gets captured in the songwriting process. So you think about that person and what they went through, and it's sort of funny because my grandfather, even though he was in the military through World War II and was on a boat for most of it, and the song is called Nomad of the Sea. It's actually about the fact that once he retired, all he liked to do was go on cruises. So you get your love for your family in different ways, and you just put it out there. You write it down, and you make sure that the world is going to remember this person.
Go Ford for your next truck or SUV and find an easier way to buy with Woodhouse Ford today, and experience the convenience of buying with Woodhouse Ford. Lease a 2023 Ford Escape Active for $397 per month for 48 months and 7,500 miles per year. First payment and $299 doc fee due at signing. Security deposit waived. Tax, title, license extra with approved credit. Expires 12/04/2023.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Choose from a great selection of digital coupons and use them up to 5 times in one transaction. Check our app for details. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
I don't know if I could ever do a cruise, especially in this.
Oh no, it's not my thing. I would get so claustrophobic.
Oh, totally, absolutely. But with your daughter, it's funny with kids. I tried very early on with my daughter, just like getting really into the Beatles.
Yeah.
Really just like programmed her with. I was like, I hope she doesn't like have a backlash on this. I took her to the Paul McCartney show in 2009 at Piedmont Park.
Uh-huh.
It's really, so she had a good base, because then she got into she got into Kanye West and hip hop and all this other stuff. I'm like, I hope she comes back to that at some point.
But as long as they come back to it, right? Because I'll say that there's some stuff that my daughter listens to that I wish was never implanted in my ear. But somehow it's in there. It's like that YouTube generation, however they're working it. But she goes back to what she loved from the originals. And like occasionally I'll hear her humming Going Down the Road Feeling Bad, and she loves the Indigo Girls. I mean, that's her thing right there. And she's been able to go to an Indigo Girls concert, meet them, sort of, she's the festival kid, she's the kid that's spinning around the parking lot.
Nice.
Just loving the music, just having a great time.
Nice. You've been playing live in the Atlanta area for several years now. What was your earliest venues that you were playing at?
Well, unfortunately, one of them's not around anymore. But the Brandy House was one of my favorite spots to both play at and hang out. In the early '90s. I mean, that was a spot that. The late great Colonel Bruce Hampton used to sort of have as his place. So whenever any of the big bands came through town, the late night concert was also always like Colonel Bruce featuring random people at the Brandy House. So that was super fun. I've as a musician, playing different theaters means a lot, right? So it's where you play sometimes has some special meaning. I remember the first time I played the stage at the Georgia Theater in Athens. This was the original Georgia Theater before it burnt down. And I was in a group that was opening up for a larger act. But it was, it's a different, it's an elevated experience, or like playing a night at Eddie's Attic here in Atlanta or Variety Playhouse. You know, and I, don't get me wrong, I love the bar gigs. I love playing to people wherever they might be. But there is something special about people wanting to be there to see the music, you know, and that's a big difference between like those restaurant and bar gigs is your background.
That's true. I mean, I love Eddie's, but I think it depends on the act, because I've been there where people are like half paying attention.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've been there and they're like mesmerized by what's on.
Well, I played there where they've half been paying attention.
Yeah, one of my guests on the show, AJ Croce, he's played there, and I've seen him in other venues around town. Eddie's, they were really paying attention. I was like, we had a place up here called Tavern on the Bridge.
Oh yeah.
And if you remember that, up on Medlock Bridge in Johns Creek, Georgia, over here,
Yes.
north of Atlanta. And nobody was paying attention. Poor AJ was like totally drowned out.
And those are, you know, there's the gigs that you get super psyched for and the gigs that you kind of need to do. And I, you know, there's a part of me that hates to say that, but that's the reality, is that sometimes you get booked at places, you don't really realize what you're getting booked to before you show up, and you realize you're on a bill with 5 other bands and they're all death metal rockers, and you're like the only people with acoustic instruments. And you're like, what is happening? How did you even call us? Why did you want us here? You know, but you look at the crowd and you sort of shift. You're like, all right, well, at least we could play these songs because y'all are going to really like that.
You know, it reminds me of that scene from the Blues Brothers where they're playing behind chicken wire.
Yeah. And they did that great cover of Rawhide. Yeah, that's fantastic.
I'm sure every musician, I mean, they could write books, I'm sure.
We've all had our occasions of playing behind chicken wire.
So these days, you're trying to get out there. Places like Tucker Brewing Company is.
That's right. And it's hard to book gigs because I'm not. I choose my words really well here. I want to make sure that I am playing at places that are going to be as respectful, you know, to me and my health as I would be to them. So I am only playing at outdoor venues right now, and places that are implementing wearing a mask, social distancing, you know, things of that nature. It's hard in the winter. You know, it's like the idea of the feast or the famine, and we're definitely in famine right now. We're going to get to spring and places will open up back outside and it'll be wonderful. But yeah, so I'll be tomorrow afternoon, Saturday afternoon, I'll be up at Tucker Brewing Company. They have a wonderful outdoor beer garden with lots of games and a whole lot of space to just, you know, be able to move around. And then at the end of the month or middle of the month, I'm going to be playing the outdoor, what's called the Outer Space at Waller's Coffee Shop in Decatur. And really, you know, at this moment, I'm trying to just be very selective, only because they're, you know, and I'm not going to call anybody out, but there are a lot of venues that are not doing this properly right now. And there's a lot of people that are getting sick. And actually, there's a musician friend of mine, and again, I won't call anybody out by name, but he's gotten COVID 3 different times now. Oh my gosh. And he doesn't stop playing these indoor bars that are crowded, you know, and it's just like, you're kind of doing it to yourself after a while.
It's such a no-brainer. And I was saying this about the supermarket down in Naples, Florida, where they're just, yeah, they're partying like it's 1999. It's just like, what are you guys doing? And it's like there are always consequences. Every time you hear about like some venue like they had up in Sturgis, South Dakota, people got sick. It was just like A equals B. It's so simple and it's so easy to see what they were doing.
But we're really in a unique time where science doesn't exist, you know. So I don't really get it, and I understand that people have to pay their bills. I was one of these people at the beginning of all this that said, you know what, shut it all down, shut everything down for like a month and a half. Everybody go tuck yourselves in, and then we can come out of this, but that didn't happen. And so there are a lot of places that continue to have large celebrations and large parties and sort of deny that any of this was actually real. But again, I can tell you from knowing people who have passed from COVID, my own family members getting sick, it's very real. And the thing that gets me the most is when people start to blur the lines between what is public health and what is politics.
Right.
This is not a political issue, folks. Knocking on your door here. Just want to let you know that this has to do with germs, and they don't care what side you vote on.
Yeah, it's so true. It's really just total common sense.
So it's a delicate, sort of a fine line to walk as a musician. Am I going to play those venues? I get calls from different folks that say, we've got openings this weekend. You want to come and play? And I'll respond, what's your COVID protocols? And most will say nothing.
Yeah.
Our servers wear masks.
Yeah.
So how far away will I be from the audience? We'll put a little rope up.
Yeah. That's
the thing about germs. They don't care about ropes. They keep going.
Oh, rope.
Right. It's not like, oh, well, the germ is not, Corona is not on the list. You can't make it in. So it's, I really think that we're going to make it out of this. I think it's a hard learning experience for the country. I hope, I really do hope that people who love music, whether you're a musician or you're not a musician, but you love music, you love entertainment, the arts of any kind, that you can come out of this experience with a better understanding for what that value is, and not take it for granted. Really enjoy the fact that we have culture. It's what literally separates us from the apes. So give us a chance. Keep your masks on, and we will be back to entertain you literally as soon as we can.
Yeah, I think that's really all very important. In the meantime, you're at home, you're recording. Some great music is coming out of being in quarantine from a lot of artists. Gosh, I mean, even the big ones to everybody down from there. It's just incredible what people are coming up with.
A lot of good stuff has come out of it musically. Yeah.
But yeah, you have to look at the silver linings, definitely. So, any other songs that you'd like to perform? I
got this one song that I was just finishing up that I'd love to leave you with. It's a song called "The Creek," and I was having a conversation with my friend Bree from Skunkweed Juju, which is another group. I love their name. They got the best name on the planet. And she was talking to me. We were talking about meditation. And meditation doesn't necessarily mean sitting on a pillow, folding your legs, right? Meditation is also going on a solo hike. Getting away, getting lost, figuring it out, coming back to where you were. And so this is a song called "The Creek" that I wrote very much about that idea of natural meditation. On a crisp fall morning, the wind picked up, so I followed it downstream. Grass bent sideways on the banks of the shores, the pebbles crunched under my feet. My thoughts were all I had packed that day, and they were heavier than I could bear. Some can move on and some will get stuck, and I'm trapped between here and there. Wild wind whistled the leaves of the ferns, the sun in my eyes till my sheets were burned. I'm dusty, I'm dirty, just like I should be. Dip my hands in the water to wash them clean. Oh, my thoughts were all I had packed that day. They were heavier than I could bear. And some can move move on and some will get stuck, and I'm trapped between here and there. As the day turned to dusk, bats came about, swooping around with mosquitoes in their mouth. I dip my hands in that water again, head back home where there's not food on the pan. My thoughts were all I had back that day. They were heavier than I could bear. Some can move on and some will get stuck. I'm trapped between here and there. Oh, my thoughts were all I had back that day. They were heavier than I could bear. Some can move on, but some will get stuck. I'm trapped between here and there. I'm trapped between here and there.
Excellent. Great music. I love having these little mini concerts for myself listening virtually.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you get the best seat in the house.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I really appreciate you having me on Tales from the Corners. And I love what you're doing as a podcaster. Thank you for sharing our tales, sharing our stories, and making sure that we're being recognized.
Oh, completely. Totally. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. All right. Well, have a great night.
You too. Have a good one. Take care.
Okay, bye.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Choose from a great selection of digital coupons and use them up to 5 times in one transaction. Check our app for details. Baker's, fresh for everyone.